Well, I'll be talking about the public's view in UK for dog overpopulation and their willingness to pay for a more humane management. I'll get to this when I talk about it later. Oh, I must say that this has been funded by the School of Economics at the University of Kent. So what's the background? We all know that every city, every country has stray dogs. That's the reality. Well, in the UK, there are almost 100,000 stray dogs each year handled by local authorities. These dogs have three fates. They're either reconnected with their owners within a 7-day statutory period, they're either sent to animal welfare organizations or adopted out from the local authority, or they're put to sleep. It is estimated that a total of, how much is it? Almost 9,000 dogs are put to sleep. When we had the stray survey by the Dog Trust, 5,000 dogs to 337 did not have an official notice of why they were put to sleep. So this tells me that maybe most of them were just healthy adoptable pets that were not rehomed and were put to sleep. In a paper by Hupta et al. In 2007, it was reported that nationwide, the UK, they put to sleep 20,000 dogs per year. And that's quite a lot. So what we did with our study is we did an online survey for a representative UK sample of 500 individuals, which we had the quote on the gender, the age, and dog ownership, because the Pet Food Manufacturer Association and some studies have said that 25 to 30% of households in the UK have dogs, so we wanted to keep it at the 30%. And we looked at what are their perceptions. What do they think about dog overpopulation? Is this a problem? Do they think we should make it better? Do we think that it's a problem we should address? And are they willing to pay to address this? So in order to address the are they willing to pay, we used the choice experiment method. And we had two payment methods. The first one was, are you willing to voluntarily contribute? And the second one was, are you willing through a tax payment, a mandatory payment, to help address this question, this issue? I don't know if many of you know what a choice experiment method is. It's a stated preference technique, which we ask people to decide on different options, which one would they prefer, based on some characteristics. It's based on Lancaster's consumer demand, which tells me that a good, in this case, the dog, is chosen by the bundle of its characteristics. Here, its age, its gender, the color of his coat, the size, etc. Now, let's get to our findings. From our representative sample of 500 people, 77.4% said that they currently own a pet, whether it's a dog, a cat, a rabbit, a hamster, anything. 30% are dog owners. Again, this was in the quota because we wanted to have the UK representative sample. 58.4% said that they either currently have or in the past had a dog. So 58.4% had an interaction with a dog, whether now or in the past. And 45% reported owning a dog in the past. Now, when we asked them, where did you obtain your dog? The majority, 40.75%, said from a breeder. So this was the leading outlet of where they got their dog. Next was the shelter with 28.42%, and then from a friend, 25.68%. An interesting point here is only 1.37% got it from the local authority or their local council. So this tells me that people are not aware that local authorities have dogs, which are adoptable. Now, when we asked them whether they were aware that healthy dogs are being put to sleep if not rehomed, 66% agreed that they did know this. And an interesting 34.20% said that they're not aware of this. When we told them that at least 7,000 dogs are put to sleep each year, what do you think of this? Is it of grave concern, mild concern, no concern at all? Well, about half of them, 50%, said is of grave concern. And only a 10% said this is of no concern at all. So we can see here that the majority is in fact very concerned about this issue. Now, when we ask them directly, do you support the current practice putting dogs to sleep if they're not rehomed? Do you think that this is the best management we can do? 69% said no. Again, an interesting 31% said yes. We didn't ask why they think that. That would be a good question, but because of limitation of time, we weren't able to. So 69% said that they don't think the current management is something that should remain. We should do something else. And then we asked them, what kind of other policies do they think that will mitigate the problem? When we asked about compulsory microchipping, 77% said that they would agree it would help regulate and mitigate the stray dog population. When we asked whether investment in public education on promoting responsible dog ownership, 80.4% agreed. When we asked whether neutering and spaying dogs that are not for breeding purposes should be imposed, 79.4% agreed. And when we asked whether the reintroduction of a licensing scheme should be imposed, 82.8% agreed. In the UK, they had a dog licensing scheme until 1987, but it was abolished because it was considered not cost effective. But the fee had remained the same since it was, I think, 37 pence. So when we asked whether a reintroduction of this would help mitigate the dog overpopulation problem, 82.8% agreed. And we can see here that any other policy that we asked, people agreed. They thought that it would help. Now, from this 82.8% that said that licensing scheme would be a good option, we asked them what type of licensing policy. 0.09% said a flat rate for all dogs. A very close 33.82% said a reduced rate based on owner's circumstances, income, senior citizens, etc. 23.91% said reduced rate for specific dogs, so perhaps a reduced rate for shelter dogs or a reduced rate for second or third dog, etc. And others said 2.9%, and they either had a combination of all or a nominal fee just to have the licensing scheme for attractability and not for funding. Now, that was the first part of the survey. The second part of the survey was to ask people whether they're willing to pay to prolong the 7-day statutory period. As you know, the UK has 7 days in which local authorities hold the dog for the owner to find it. If it doesn't find it, it's either, as we said before, sent to animal welfare organization or is put to sleep. So what we asked the public was, are they willing to pay to prolong the 7-day statutory period? What would this mean? More days would mean owners have more time to find their pet. More days means animal welfare organizations have more time to find capacity to save more dogs. More days in an annual basis means less dogs being put to sleep. So the hypothetical question we asked them was, to reduce the number of healthy adoptable dogs that are being put to sleep each year, local authorities would need to raise the necessary funds for their upkeep. These funds would be asked to be contributed by you, the public. You would be hypothetically asked to make a payment on a monthly basis that would be used to prolong the kennel stay of a stray dog of your choice. The dog would remain in the kennels until it's rehomed, and there would be no other commitment in terms of time, etc., required from your end. In the case of the supported dog being subsequently adopted, the payment would be transferred to another dog of your choice. So this is the hypothetical scenario that they were given. From the 500 people we had, we split them into 2 pots, 250 for the mandatory tax and 250 for the voluntary approach. So for 250 people, we were asked, what if we taxed you? How much would you be willing to pay? And the other one, how much would you be willing to pay on a monthly basis voluntarily? Now, because these people were paid, some of the respondents just said, I'm not willing to pay, or I'm not willing to pay. So we had to reduce the sample sizes into those who said at least one option. We'll come to this in a bit. So, when we had the hypothetical scenario, we gave them options for dogs. The options had the characteristics of the age of the dog, which was 2 levels. It could be a younger dog between the ages of 8 weeks to 2 years old, and an older dog between the ages of 2 and above. The size, which was 4 levels, a small, medium, big, and large. The pedigree, whether it was a crossbreed or not, whether it was a purebred, whether it was sterilized or not, whether it was microchipped or not, and the monthly contribution. We came with these specific amounts, which is 2, 5, 8, 12, and 15 pounds, from a focus group and a pilot study. So here is an example of the choice set. They were given option A, option B, and no option. So for example, option A was a 2-year-old or older dog, big, purebred, not sterilized, and microchipped. And they had to give 5 pounds each month. So here are our results. For the mandatory tax payment, 179 gave some option, not just no option at all. And it reveals that the age was a significant factor, showing that younger dogs would be most likely to be supported. And the monthly contribution, showing that a lesser fee would be one that they'd be willing to give. For the voluntary contribution, again, the age is a significant factor, showing that younger dogs are more likely to be supported. The pedigree, showing a crossbreed, is more likely to be supported. This is probably because we have the notion that a purebred will find a home very quickly, so probably people think that I should support a crossbreed. And again, the monthly contribution showed that it's a significant factor and I'm willing to pay less rather than more. Now, when you wanted to estimate this willingness to pay for the tax, it showed that people are willing to pay on a monthly basis around 2 pounds for a younger dog, and on a voluntary contribution, they are willing to pay 2.54 pounds for a younger dog, 1.64 for a small-sized dog, and 1.65 for a crossbreed. So if in the shelter, in the local authority, there's a young dog that is small and is a crossbreed, then probably I would be willing to pay the adding of this, which is 5.83, I think. Yes, so it's 5.83 pounds. So what does the study tell us? It told us that the UK population is concerned about animals. They are an animal-loving nation, as they're reputed to be. They think that the pet dog overpopulation problem is an issue that needs to be addressed. We have seen that policies for mitigating the pet dog overpopulation problem can be supported by the UK public, despite in order to not euthanize the dogs, we use another policy. And additionally, we have found that people are willing to pay on a monthly basis, even if it's on a mandatory or on a voluntary basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, for a very interesting presentation. And again, thank you for finishing it within the given time limit. I will now invite any questions from the floor. Thank you.
Paolo Dalla Villa, European Commission. What is the average adoption rate of the shelters you at least know in UK?
Of the shelters, of the returning of the local authorities?
Well, let's say both.
For the local authorities, I found that it was around 60 to 70% that were returned to owners. And for shelters, I'm not sure because it depends on what kind of policy they have. For example, Dog Trust has a no-kill policy, So eventually, all dogs will be adopted out, and the time scale I don't know. But for Battersea, they do have a kill policy, so I wouldn't know the average.
This is an important element.
Yes.
So you actually don't know.
It depends on the shelter.
Thank you.
Hello, Caroline Yates from the Mayhew Animal Home in London. It's more a comment rather than a question. I just wondered, have you shown these findings to the Association of Dogs and Cats Homes?
Sorry, Lee?
Have you shown the findings of your survey to the Association of Dogs and Cats Homes in the UK, which is the umbrella body for all the animal
No, I
welfare?
have not.
No?
I have not.
Is there plans to do that?
Yes, I do plan to do that.
Okay, and my second comment is interesting because within the Association of Dog and Cats Homes, there is often a lot of discussion about who supports the idea of bringing back licensing in the UK or not.
Yes.
And I think one of the issues that causes confusion for the general public is that there is not a consensual agreement between all
Yes.
the animal welfare
Yes.
organisations in the UK. We at the Mayhew would support a form of licensing, so I'm quite pleased to see what you've said in your report. However, some of the larger organisations which have bigger influence are very much against the idea of licensing.
I am aware of that, but one of their supporting arguments is about Northern Ireland, and that their licensing scheme didn't work, but since 2013 they've changed it. So I think that will give us some evidence of whether it does work or not.
Hi, Andrew Rowan from Humane Society International. I've always been curious about the British numbers because essentially shelters in Britain are euthanizing about 0.3 dogs per thousand. The equivalent number in the United States is about 6 dogs per thousand. Used to be 30 dogs per thousand. And everybody's very pleased that we're down to 6 dogs per thousand, but Britain at 0.3 dogs, and yet the rhetoric that one hears, and you sort of added to it a little bit, is that this is a horrendous number.
Yes.
0.3 dogs per thousand is a horrendous number. But you know, 900,000 dogs a year are probably dying in the United Kingdom, and 20,000 of them, probably some for cause, are being euthanized in shelters. I mean, how small do we, for every sort of additional 0.1 percentage point that you reduce that number, you're probably spending an enormous amount of money. And the relative costs of changing that are going to be big the closer you get to zero. Much bigger the closer you get to zero. I mean, at what point does it become cost prohibitive?
Yes, that is an interesting question, and I think a cost-benefit analysis of the different options of policies will give you a lead on whether it's actually cost-effective to do this or not. But if you look at it at a welfare point of view, I think it's worth trying, at least.
You mentioned that if the animals stayed in the council pounds for a longer time, that would give the welfare organisations greater time to find space for them.
Yes?
How is that quantified?
If I understood correctly, if the time is prolonged of their holding the local authority, this means that animal shelters have more time to adopt other dogs out. So they can't say, I don't have enough capacity. They might be able to. This is hypothetical, but
Right.
it is something that can be done. You have more time.
Given the waiting list to get animals into UK rehoming centres, I think that needs some further investigation. And then the other thing is increasing the dog's time in local authority. That could be suggested that that's not doing anything for their welfare. In fact, it's poor animal welfare to keep them in that sort of environment for an extended period of time.
You mean to be kennelled?
Correct, in local authority.
The
kennels.
RSPCA said that it will stop euthanizing dog on the basis of kennel distress.
I think it's probably a really big area, so...
Yeah, can we have 2 more questions and then we'll move on to the next presentation?
A similar comment to hers, that I think it's a very dangerous game to play when we're talking about extending mandatory holding periods. Now that might be a protocol or system that works in shelters with a very low intake, high shelter capacity. But when we're talking about shelters, municipal organizations, particularly in North America, these shelters have a very limited capacity. They might euthanize 60 to 80% of the dogs, and they simply can't afford to hold on to dogs, even sometimes longer than 3 days, let alone 7 days. And so when these type of policies are enacted or are called for, it significantly minimizes life-saving capacity. You know, on a superficial basis, we think, great, you know, let's give dogs 5 days, 7 days, 9 more days to find a home. But that simply doesn't work in practice because it increases infectious disease spread, it increases overcrowding, and ultimately it compromises life-saving ability. So I just think we have to be careful when we're arguing for increasing statutory holding periods.
Yes, thank you. That is why the study was based on whether people are willing to pay to support a prolonged kennel stay in the local authorities, which means that the funding would be coming from citizens.
I think that the problem, though, is that the general public, like, they're not aware of,
Yes.
you know, they're not aware of euthanasia rates,
Yes.
let alone compromise animal welfare and infectious disease control issues.
Yes.
So it's dangerous to put it in their hands.
Okay, thank you.
One last one, please. Thank you.
Hi, and this is just a carry-on comment from what was being said. I think because I'm not very clear whether when you ask people to pay on a monthly basis, are they expecting to pay, like, how long will you ask to pay, and before the dog finally had to be put down, or will there be another media disaster when suddenly they say they are paying a month or 2 months and then the dog still had to be put down?
Thank you. If I understood correctly, you're asking how long they would be staying and how long they would be supported. Well, the hypothetical scenario is asked whether they'd be willing to pay on a monthly basis. So, in essence, this experiment said that we'd keep the dog until it's rehomed. So that's the hypothetical scenario. Because we're only checking if people are willing to pay. We're not looking at this as an actual policy. We're just interested to see if people are interested in addressing this question and if they're interested to pay for it. And they are. So this means that we have the public on our side.
Thank you, Christina, for very interesting presentation and rather interesting discussion from the audience. I'm sure there will be many opportunities during the course of this conference to continue with this discussion.